Getting a website up and running with the functionality that we want is no simple, easy task unless we have the right tools to do it. In this nugget, I'd like to share with you one of those tools, and it's called a web part. Let's begin. Back in the 1980s, when I first got involved with computers, one of the wonderful things that I came across was a batch file. And they're miraculous. A batch file is a set of commands that you can use, and they run as a batch, so you don't have to manually do it every single time. So we could have like dozens or hundreds of different batch files for various purposes. So we need to do something, we ran a batch file, and would do all those functions. Well, in the world of web pages, if we're building web pages, we might need lots of various functions. For example, we might want a little area for blogging, or we might want a little area for social networking and status updates. We might want a little area for document management, so people can upload and share documents while they're working on a project. We might want to add calendar functionality, or we might want to add the ability to have search capabilities. And the great news is we can use something called a web part as part of a web page that has that functionality built in. So all we need to do is drop in a web part, the part we need, and we don't have to code and configure all that from scratch. It's like pre-built, pre-bundled, ready to go parts of a web page that we can just drop in and start using. So regarding what exactly is a web part, it's a reusable component that can assist us in getting the content we want on our web page inside of SharePoint. And because they are reusable, if we have 5 or 6 different sites or 5 or 6 different pages that all need the same functionality, we can just bring that functionality in as part of a web part, and most of the heavy lifting is already done for us. Now, the next logical question is this. If these web parts are so awesome, how exactly do we add them? And I will walk you through that. We can add them to a wiki page by simply saying we want to insert a web part, pick the web part that we want and identify where we want it and click on OK. And it's inserted. And then once it's inserted in what's called a zone, an area on the web page. And then if we want to edit it, we put the page in edit mode, and then there's a little option up here in the top right-hand corner of the web part that gives us a drop down to edit that specific web part if we need to change or tweak or customize that web part. And let's demonstrate how easy it is to add a web part and edit it in our lab environment. So here in our lab environment, we're going to log on to our Windows 10 machine, and we'll use the lab password of NUGGET !23 and press enter. And I'll click on the desktop, and let's go ahead and click on the icon for Chrome in the taskbar to launch Chrome. Let's connect to our top level site at srv1.nuglab.com, and we'll press enter. And we'll authenticate as the user administrator with our password of NUGGET !23 and press enter. All right, and it is loading the initial homepage. And now the colors are the way they are because in our previous nugget, as we changed the look and feel of the Acme site, I saved those changes and I brought them over as a starting point for this next lab. And the cool thing is, if you want to change these colors in this lab, you have the skills and tools from our previous nugget on exactly how to do that. So feel free to change the colors and the layout if you want to, but just be aware that they're only going to persist for the duration of your existing lab. The next time you go to another lab, it's going to have the presets and everything else that I've put in place to make sure that you can have lab success in every single lab as we go through this course together. So let's go to an existing page that we already have created on the Acme site. And because we have not yet put a link for that page 2, under Acme Inc., let's go ahead and go to Site Contents in the Quick Launch over here on the left. And from Site Contents over here on the right, let's go ahead and click on Site Pages, and we can launch page 2 right from there by simply clicking on the link for page 2 of Acme Inc. top level site. So if we wanted to insert a web part, let's say for example we wanted to insert the ability for document management right here on this page so that people could upload and download files from this page. We have several options to get started. One, we could click on edit up here to edit this web page up in the top right, or we could go over to the page tab here and then select edit from the ribbon. Either one will work. So I'm going to click on the page tab over here on the left, and then we'll go ahead and click on edit to edit this page 2. So if we want to insert a web part, and let's use a web part for document management, let's scroll down to the bottom where we want to put this web part, and I'll press enter a couple times. And let's decide to put the web part right here. Or, you know what? We could put it above his picture if we wanted to as well. It's simply up to you as far as where you want to put this web part. So for now, I've got the cursor, the icon, right there, and I'm currently in edit mode for this page. So if we want to insert a web part, what we're going to do is we're going to use the Insert tab just to the right of the Format Text tab. So we'll click on Insert, the Insert tab, and because we want to add a web part, we're going to select Web Part from the ribbon. And the help says it's going to give us a list based on categories of all the web parts that we can go ahead and add. So we'll click on Web Part. That's going to open up the subsequent web part gallery, and then we can choose the web part that we want to insert. So here we have the categories in the Apps category. We have a Documents web part, which will basically add a document management app, if you will, as a web part to the location where our cursor is, which is right below Bob's picture. So we'll go ahead and with document selected, we'll go ahead and click on the Add button, which is right here. So we'll go ahead and click on Add, and that will add it for us. So we'll click on Add. It says it's working on it, and da-da-da-da, we've just added a web part to this web page. And what it did was it put it in this zone right here, this area right here. Now, if we wanted to edit this web part and customize it, we can use this drop down, and we can get to the drop down right here over in the top right hand corner of this specific web part. So we'll go ahead and click on the down arrow there. So we have an option for minimize, close, delete, and what we want to do is edit it. So we can edit this web part simply by selecting Edit Web Part from the drop down. So we'll click on Edit Web Part. Now, it may look like not too much has happened, but if we scroll up, there are some editing controls that are higher up on the page, and those are editing controls regarding this web part. So let's just scroll up just a little bit so we can see the editing panel for that web part. So we can modify the view, the toolbar type, the appearance. So let's expand appearance. And the title currently is Documents. If we wanted to call this Bob's Documents, let's go ahead and call it Bob's Shared Documents, DOCS for short. And then we can also modify lots of bells and whistles regarding this web part. But for now, we'll just make that one little change. We'll scroll down here to the bottom, and we can click on Apply. That applies the changes, and then it allows us to continue editing it. Or we can click on OK, which applies the changes, and then exits out of the edit mode for this specific web part. So let's click on OK. And that removes us from the edit mode for this specific web part. Also, you'll notice that we have Bob's Shared Docs. That shows up as we customized it. And now if we want to save the page, we can either click here to save the page, or we can click here to save the page, which will include this web part that we just customized. So it doesn't matter too much which save we click on. I'll click on the upper right-hand corner save icon, and we're done. This is the content for page 2 of the Acme Inc. top-level site. If we scroll down, there's Bob's Shared Documents. So here we have the functionality regarding this web part regarding document management and document sharing. So that's how easy it is to insert a web part into an existing web page. Now this web page, to create it, what we did was we were at the top level site and we went to the gear and we said add a page. And by default, that creates a wiki page, a free form page that we can then put text or add web parts, etc. However, if we knew that we wanted to create a brand new web page and we knew that we were going to use primarily web parts on that page, there is yet another option that makes it faster to do that. And I'd like to demonstrate that for you right now. Let's go ahead and go back to the top level site for Acme LLC, aka it used to be Acme Inc. until we changed the title. And at the top level site, let's go over to Site Contents in the Quick Launch over here on the left. And with Site Content selected, let's go to Site Pages over here on the right. And under Site Pages, what we could do is we could click here to create a new page, but that would also just create a generic freeform wiki page. If we wanted to create a web part page that's like pre-organized for us, what we could do is we could go ahead right here from the site pages for the site, we can click on the Files tab. Let's do that now. So open the top left, we'll click on Files, and from here we can select New Document, and from the drop down it gives us the option for a web part page, and that gives us some pre-built zones that makes it easier to get up and running and started if we're using primarily just web parts on that page. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's click on Web Part Page, and let's go ahead and name this Page 3. And one of the cool things is we can go ahead and choose a template right here. So for example, if we choose the header, right column, body, it gives us a little preview over here on the left of what that would look like. And so it creates those zones for us, and then we can just add in the web parts to the zones where we want them to be on the page. So for this demonstration, let's use the header, footer, and 3 columns, which is going to look like this. And we'll scroll down just a little bit. It's also specifying where it's going to keep this web part page. Our existing pages for this site are in the pages library for this site. And by default, it wants to put this web part page that we're about to create in the site assets document library. If you want to change that, you can. If you want to put it back in site pages, you can as well. The default is site assets. So I'm going to leave that. Just be aware though, if we go back to look at this page, it's going to be in the document library called site assets and not the site pages library. So let's go ahead in the bottom right hand corner and click on create. And that will create this new page for us. And now right here, based on the layout we had, all we have to do is click these hyperlinks and it will bring up the library so we can select the web part that we want. So instead of having a blank wiki page and having to insert and insert and insert and insert, we can simply click on add web part, add web part, add web part, and it will put them in those locations for us automatically. So as an example for the header, let's click on add web part. The category of apps and the web part documents is selected by default at the top of the list. Let's go ahead and click on add to add that. And right here, it added that web part for us. It also gave us the ability right here to add another one if we want to. So let's scroll down just a little bit. Let's go on the left column. We'll click add web part right here for the left column. And let's select blog and let's go to, how about blog tools, and we'll click on add. All right, and that's done. And in the middle column, let's go ahead and click on add a web part. And regarding blogs, let's do blog notifications and click on add. And then for the right column, we'll click on the add a web part here on the right hand side. And let's select blog archives and click on add. And now that we've added these 4 different web parts to this web part page, my question for you is, how would we go about modifying? For example, how would we modify the details? Let me scroll down a little bit. How would we modify the details for example, this web part right here, the blog tools? Do you remember? What do we do? We're already in edit mode for the page, but how do we edit the individual web part? And if you remember, that's awesome. If you need a little refresher, that's totally normal. We've only seen it once. And the way we'd edit that is we would go ahead and hover over this web part. We'd select the drop down in the upper right hand corner of that web part. And from here, we can go ahead and select edit to edit that specific web part. So when we're done, we'll go ahead and click on stop editing. And now it's showing us the view of this web part page that we just created. So near the top, we have our documents web part, and then we have the other web parts that we added. And for notifications, there aren't any notifications yet, but I imagine they'd pop up right there if we had any, because that's the web part that we placed in the middle. Or if we didn't want the notifications, easy peasy, we could go ahead and click on edit page once again in the upper left-hand corner, scroll down a little bit, and we'll simply go ahead and hover over the blog notifications, use the drop-down arrow, and say delete. And that will remove that with the click of the OK button. That'll remove it from our page. And then we'll go ahead and click on stop editing. And now the notifications web part is no longer on this page. So in this nugget, we've identified what a web part is. It's a prepackaged bundle of functionality. And we also identified on how to add them by using the insert option to add them into a page. Or if we have created a web part page, there's some automated tools by simply clicking on the link to add a web part. So it can put the web part on that page in the location that we want it, in the zone where we want that web part to be. So now that we've enjoyed this nugget together and we've taken a look at web parts, what I would encourage you to do, my friend, is log on to CBT Nuggets, click on the lab link over on the right, and practice creating these web parts on your own in our lab environment. And have a bunch of fun doing it. Meanwhile, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.